way, the triangles had no really fighting over who was going to get the bonus chips. It was fairly easy for them to make a decision. Each got one. And they decided the two triangles, obviously, split them. The three squares, one of these squares decided to give up their bonus chip so that the other two people could get it. She was, I don't know if it was fear, I don't know if she just didn't care, but that's what happened. And these six in the circles, they decided they were going to try and mirror a fair system like the triangles have and do rock, paper, scissors. And the top two people were going to get the bonus chips. Now, different from the first test, the second test had 7 more people. So the amount of trading kind of went down. It went down by 1, even though there was more people. And when I separated them into groups, I put 3 people in the triangles, and then all the groups got 3 bonus chips. Now it was a little different when they were distributing their bonus chips, because like the triangles did before, they split them. But the squares, they just kind of split it evenly. Whoever wanted one got one, and the 3 people who didn't get them didn't really want them. They didn't care. Or they might have been afraid of the power that it would have given them. But for the 8 circles, something that was really intriguing to me was that the 3 men in the circle group grabbed the bonus chips immediately. And the women in the group, the 5 women, didn't say anything, they just let it happen. They didn't say, hey, I want a bonus chip. They just let the men do it. Whether they were just afraid or they just figured the men should have them, I don't know, but that was something really interesting that came up. So after the bonus chips were distributed and some people were switched from triangles to squares or whatever based on their new score, there was a second round where none of the triangles traded. They didn't need to. They got a rigged bag of chips in the second round. The squares and the circles got the same bag. They got an okay value of chips, but these triangles got a rigged bag. So they got basically the most points that they could get. So none of them really needed to trade. But all of the squares traded. So that could tell us that we have squares that believe they can move up. So if they're trading, they still have hope. They still think they can beat a triangle and get to that top position. But if we look at the circles, they've kind of given up. There's only 2 of them that have that hope of getting better. They didn't really want to do it anymore. They were just done. And at the very end, the circles, didn't get any candy. The squares, each of them got 1 piece. But the triangles, they got as much candy as they wanted. And that is when we started seeing things happen and started seeing people talk about protest, revolution, and just this little system that I created that took like half an hour. People wanted to protest, which it's just a game, but they got so emotionally attached to it because they added candy to it, or I added candy to it, sorry. So in my results section of my presentation, I will look at my findings, I will compare my findings, I will tell you about the significance, the strengths and weaknesses, and some of the limitations that I encountered. So I found that there was 2 behavioral shifts. When we started separating people into their groups of triangles, squares, and circles, there was 1 behavioral shift. I'm calling that a soft shift. People didn't really know what to do, they were kind of quiet, they knew something was different. But there was a second and stronger behavioral shift when I introduced the candy. I'm calling that a hard shift. It was rough, it was aggressive. People started getting mad that they didn't have candy. So the commodity made a stronger shift. And now I'm going to talk about observer behavior because in the second test that I conducted, one of my observers unintentionally formed a relationship with one of the triangles. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So the comparison, like we looked at the 2 tests that I did. There was 11 people compared to 18. And in the second test, even less people traded. So in the first one, the circles use rock, paper, scissors to do it, a fair way to distribute their chips. Where in the second one, the men just chose it and the women just followed. And also in the first one, there was calm protesting. They wanted to get candy, but they didn't really do anything about it. They just kept saying, we want candy, why don't we have it? And in the second one, they got up and they wanted it, they stole it from the triangles, they actually had a revolution. So, the significance of my findings. The people definitely influenced what happened. The amount of people and the specific people. So the AP research students are more mature. They're higher up on the social ladder. They're in a grade above the 10th grade students. So they were more calm. They didn't have a lot of emotion attached to it. And the second test was 10th graders. They had more emotion. Maybe because they were younger, they had more emotion because of the candy. That may have been part of it. The triangle's privilege. That's where I'm going back to that observer relationship with the triangles. One of my observers kept talking to one of the triangles. And so they formed that relationship, and all of the other students saw that. And they were somewhat jealous that they got to have a relationship and be talking with this person of authority and power. So some strengths of my research. I have 2 tests that I can compare the results in. I have an expert consultant who really helped me in getting background information. And he helped me finding major sociological articles that have to do with my topic and helped me to create my research question. Some weaknesses. I have a prototype for an experiment. It has never been done before. I based it off of a couple different things and put different other methodologies together, but it was I didn't know what was going to happen. And my synthesizing data, I didn't have anything to base that off of. I had a couple articles that did stuff similar than I did, but their data was mostly statistical, and I wanted more action and emotion in my data. My limitations. Finding participants was a huge limitation. I had to end up using class time for my participants, and I had to get teacher permission for that. And my advertisement was difficult since I wanted only younger students and not all students from the high school. And I wanted people that sort of knew each other but didn't have a great relationship already. So, a summary. Commodities, in my case candy, affect behavior. There's a soft shift and a hard shift when you have social stratification. And this can help us to better understand the origin of stratification. My research helps us to better understand the sociology as a whole and social stratification more specifically. The implications of my findings could be further researched and its effect on the history of sociology and social stratification. These are my references. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And then our first question.
Okay, I want to know, so when you considered which methods and processes you chose to align with the purpose of your research, which methods did you actually consider and reject? That's more the question I'd like to know.
I had considered using my own class as an observational method and just standing in the hallway towards the lunchroom and just observing people and how they acted, how their groups interacted. But I thought that in a more controlled environment where I have more people that can observe things with a different perspective than me, it was beneficial to my research to get the information and the data that I wanted to collect.
All right, and then the next question, what criteria did you use to discriminate among the perspectives in order to reach a conclusion?
Can you say that again, please?
Yeah. What criteria did you use to discriminate among the perspectives in order to reach a conclusion?
Okay, so one of my observers had formed that relationship, and they had a bias towards that triangle, and I didn't want to use their data and their observations in my research because of that bias. I wanted to keep the observers and the participants separated. That way they had a completely rounded view of the participants.
All right, and then final question?
If you had 3 more months to work on this research question or